Welcome everyone to the Adult Services discussion in the series that we've been doing for the last couple of months here at ICFL for sharing COVID-19 pandemic experiences. So today what my plan is to have just kind of a loose discussion about what folks have been doing that's been working, what struggles you're kind of having, and seeing if we can help troubleshoot any of those. I do have a list of some ideas to share, and certainly that will be shared out with the recording after the discussion. So since it's kind of a small group, how do people feel about kind of going round robin and saying what you're hoping to get out of the call today? So whether that be you're just wanting to hang out and listen to what people are sharing, whether you have a really specific struggle that you're looking to get help with, or if you're just looking to get ideas. So before we do that, I'm gonna also introduce Jen Redford, who is a colleague of mine at ICFL. Jen, if you'd help me monitor the chat, that would be fabulous. As long as you can. Great, thank you. So who would like to share first what they're hoping to get out of our time today?
I can.
Thanks, Susan.
I think multiple things. I mean, one is ideas. Two is just to see how virtual programming is going for people, what's working, what's not. And then we're also sort of having a little bit of a, and I wouldn't say struggle, but trying to figure out a decision. We have a summer writing program with three different events with writers coming in to teach writing workshops. They were all designed to be outdoors. So we're trying to decide whether we just cancel it entirely, whether we run it on Zoom, or whether we try to get outside and keep the registration down to about 6 people. So we're trying to figure out what to do.
Okay, great. Thanks, Susan. Who else?
I'll go next.
Thanks.
I'm a good lurker. I like to listen, hear what's going on, and getting ideas. Kind of get that contact and see what's going on around the state. And
excellent. That is a perfectly legitimate use of this call. Thank you.
I'll go next.
Thanks,
in Emmett, we're still doing curbside and kind of wanting to begin making that transition after the 1st of June. And so just kind of wanting to see what other libraries are doing, you know, things that work. Fail forward. I know that's always one of the things we do well, you know, but I also think that when we do fail, we always learn something and come out of it with a good nugget to move forward with. So just, yeah, wanting to hear ideas and things.
Great. Thanks, Alice. I appreciate that attitude.
From Manitoba. I think I'm Deanna's equivalent. And so I'm just interested in what's happening and like to, in Manitoba, we have June 1st, phase 2 of reopening, where phase 1 and libraries were given the green light to reopen by our premier. But I'm getting questions from libraries in what should be their next move in advance of the directive, which is kind of hard because it's all waiting to determine whether we have more cases. Right now we've flatlined, so we're wanting to maintain that safety, and so I'm interested in just hearing what strategies you guys have planned.
Okay. So Denise, I put in the chat, there's a link to the COVID-19 page that I've created for the state, which has some reopening plans that different libraries have shared. So there might be some ideas in there to kind of address some of those different phases. Might be a place to get started, but certainly we can chat more about that.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I can go next.
Great.
So I'm here with the Meridian Library District, and we basically have decided that in the interest of safety, we will not be returning to in-person programming through August 30th for sure. And then, you know, kind of beyond that, it is still possible that we may not be doing in-person programming for a long time. So we're trying to be really thoughtful about our priorities and what kind of programming we should have, and what does that look like. So we've started already doing some, you know, sort of youth-focused programming, but we're, you know, we need some adult programming as well, and so we've been working on that. So I'm here to kind of learn what other libraries are doing, but also to, I mean, I guess if you want to know what we're doing, we've got a few lined up, I guess, but just sort of looking for ideas to see how to connect with adults best, I guess.
Great, thanks, Emily. And certainly that's one of the goals today. So yeah, we'll see if we can some good ideas in that bucket for you. Anyone else want to share what they're hoping to get out of being on the call today? You can either unmute yourself, or if your microphone isn't working, feel free to type it in the chat, or if you're just not feeling your voice today, feel free to use the chat as well.
Hi, this is Samantha Franklin. I'm from Lewiston with Lewis Clark State College, and I'm the outlier here. We just finished our spring semester, but I'm just always interested in hearing what other libraries are doing. I was hoping there'd be someone from Lewiston City on this, but that's okay. Just interested to hear what everyone's doing around the state and how things are getting phased back in. So I'm just going to be a lurker for a little while this morning.
That's fine. Thanks for joining, Samantha, and thanks for sharing that.
And Samantha, let us know if you want us to connect you with anyone specific from the Lewiston City Library. We're happy to make introductions if you don't know any of the folks over there.
Oh, sure. Thanks, Jen. I know who Lynn Johnson is, so I could reach out to her too if need be, but thank you.
Yeah,
and I wanted to shout out to Denise, a fellow Canadian. I'm originally from Calgary, so nice to see a Canadian on there.
And I know folks from Lewiston have been on some of the previous calls, Samantha, so they definitely are engaged in these discussions. So I imagine they'd be happy to chat with what they're working on. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of start off with, which is a little bit of an outlier from what folks had said, but I want to start off with it because otherwise I'm worried I'm going to forget. So Colleen Clark, who is our volunteer coordinator at ICFL, helped me gather some of the resources and links that I'll be sharing out on the Live Idaho listserv after this recording is ready to go. And so she wasn't able to join today, so I wanted to be sure to get to some of the points that she wanted to share with you if she was able to be here. And since her focus is on volunteers, she has kind of I felt a unique perspective, and I appreciated that she shared with me some ideas. So they were things such as thinking about your board or advisory committees that you have. My allergies are acting up and I feel a sneeze coming on, so I might mute myself in a second. Awkward, hold on. So thinking about some of those advisory boards that you work with and how have you been engaging with them throughout this process? So maybe not thinking super externally at first, but thinking more locally and internally was one suggestion she had, because those are people that tend to be advocates for the library and are excited about sharing information about what the library is doing, so they can help share that message out. And in doing that, you're going to be re-engaging them, because one of the things that she has been hearing from volunteers and board members across the state is that through all of this, they have kind of started to feel a little disengaged, and that makes sense and is totally fine. But this might be an opportunity and a time to kind of reconnect with them, and thinking of that as providing an adult service in your community is kind of an interesting way to reframe that I hadn't really thought of. She also wanted to along those lines, thinking of adult services from a distance, virtually, however you're phrasing that in your library, as really focusing on that opportunity to reconnect. So thinking with internal folks first and then back out in your community. So reconnecting with the library, it might be reconnecting with services that are within your community. Maybe those services have changed. So providing adult programming could be just a matter of providing a space for local resources to talk about how they're serving their communities now versus how they were. If they have volunteer opportunities. So it might also be that it's a way for you to provide a conduit for folks in your community to kind of re-engage with some other institutions that they might not be thinking about. Also, because it might be that your library is not actually allowing volunteers back in yet. I know that that is the case at the commission right now. You know, we're still making sure that there's a very limited staff in the building. And so it might be that volunteers aren't able to come back in and function in the way that they had been. So that is where reconnecting with them about what your library is doing means that maybe right now their service to you is about being an advocate out in the community and sharing what resources you are able to offer versus more of that face-to-face engagement that maybe they were used to. So thinking about your volunteers and your board members and how you can kind of use this as a time to reconnect with them. Any thoughts that brings up for anyone, or ideas or anything anyone wants to share on that front?
I know that we have a really active volunteer program at the Meridian Library, and I know our volunteer coordinator, Pamela, she's got some of our volunteers who are, you know, really ready to jump back in. She's got some of them doing like letter writing to some of the facilities that we visit, right? Like nursing homes and things like that, just to kind of pop in and say like, hey, we're still thinking of you. And I think the volunteers appreciate being able to do something and representing the library as well.
That's a great use of their time. I love that. I've also heard of other libraries using volunteers as a way to create PPE for the library or for people coming into the library as another opportunity, or for their greater community is another thing that the library can kind of help facilitate some of that potentially. I love the letter writing though. Because then that's also reminding the greater community like, hey, the library's still here, we're still doing stuff. We might not be open and it might not look like it normally does, but still a valuable piece of the community. Anyone else? All right, so let's move on to, it sounded like a lot of people were looking for ideas of things that they could do, programs they could offer. I know that's always, I always like getting to hear about what other people are doing. So I can share some of the ideas that Colleen and I found as we were kind of looking at what libraries across the state were offering. And some of these are programming that they're providing right now, so they're doing it virtually. Some of them are programming that they had provided previously, but we felt were things that could really transition pretty well into a video or even phone environment. So the first one is Garden City Public Library has been offering online resume and will writing workshops, which are things that are easy to have a discussion about. You might not be able to have some of that hands-on time with the resume in the same way, but certainly being able to talk about what really important parts there are in a resume and how to represent your work experience. certainly that addresses a lot of needs. Workforce development is something that at the Commission we've been talking a lot about, and how that is going to be something that we're seeing on the horizon as a really big thing that libraries could be helping their adults in their community with going forward. A lot of people have lost jobs. They might not be able to get those same jobs back when the business that they were working for reopens. So potentially a lot of people looking for help with resume writing skills. And the will writing workshop is something that a lot of libraries provide throughout the year. And just seeing that as something that is fairly easy to do in a virtual environment. And these are all things that'll be on the resource list that we're going to share afterwards. And those were workshops that they partnered with somebody in the community. So that another thing that Colleen and I were being cognizant of is that right now a lot of libraries are working with skeletal staff. And the last thing we want is to try to make this seem like yet one more thing you're trying to figure out how to do. So realizing that there are other folks in the community that, you know, remembering that they've got skill sets, most of them would probably be more than happy to be helping the library at this point. And so reaching out to them and seeing if they'd be willing to do some virtual programming. So really the library is just serving as kind of who's producing the online content and helping promote it to the community. Another series that that we came across was Donnelly Public Library has been doing a tea time, which they had been doing face-to-face. Donnelly is a very small, basically one-room library, and tea time is just that. It is they have a big coffee table and a couple of couches, and they would invite community members in. I don't remember how often they were doing that, but invite community members in, and they would provide tea and a space for people to just come and chat and have some informal connection. So that seems like one that would be pretty easy to translate to a virtual environment where you just invite people to make their own cup of tea at home and come together around a virtual coffee table and have a chat with folks. That's also one that we really felt could also lend itself to people just phoning in as well, realizing that a lot of communities in Idaho don't have really stellar internet connectivity. And so wanting to think about ways that we can still provide adult services, but address that digital divide, and or folks that aren't comfortable using this technology, providing opportunities for them to connect in an environment that they're maybe a little more comfortable with. So just like on this call, there are some folks that just joined with audio. You can also call in to Zoom sessions. I don't know if any of you have done that, but you can just call on the phone. You don't have to use your laptop. Oh, nice, Alice. Emmett has a walking, talking Facebook group, much like Donnelly's. What's the walking, talking Facebook group? Tell me more about that.
Basically, what they've created a group on Facebook, and they just send out the invite on a daily basis as far as what time it's going to be, and then everybody just kind of organizes perhaps their day around that, and then just chimes into that group as they're walking the park, or maybe just walking around their house or whatever. And it's just a time of being able to visit virtually, and centered around walking, because we have a really beautiful park here and a lot of people do walk around there. So it's real similar to what Donnelly is doing, and has been pretty popular.
That's awesome. So I like the idea of that because it's still social distancing. So folks could, also if they're only able to walk in their neighborhood and can't make it to the park, they can join from wherever they're going for a walk. Maybe they're on their treadmill inside, I don't know.
Exactly.
That's great. I love that idea. And then that's also promoting physical activity, which is also really important in these times for both our physical and mental health. That's a great idea. Let's see. Manitoba libraries are making a point of phoning people that they know are isolated just to check in on them. Yes, Denise, a lot of, I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. There are a lot of libraries that I've heard have been taking that tactic as well, and maybe using, you know, using some library related service as a guise for calling, so that way it maybe isn't so overt why someone's receiving a phone call. So like, hey, we see that, you know, you had a book checked out, and you know, do you want us to renew it for you, that sort of thing. And I think that's really important to have that connection with the library and with somebody else in the community. Some of the libraries in Idaho, I know, have instituted like kind of an unofficial okay to their staff who are doing reference calls, that you can talk to people as long as you need to on the reference call, and actually encouraging library staff to maybe have more of a, obviously answering the reference question, but also feeling okay having a little more of a personal conversation with the person that's calling in, just acknowledging that sometimes that might be the only interaction that that person is having with someone in the day. And so making sure that people feel heard, and that that someone cares that they're still out there. Jen shared resume writing. Yep. Oh my gosh, they're also doing virtual exercise classes. That's cool. I have seen some other libraries doing that for like toddler time and stuff, but I hadn't realized that they were doing it for older folks too. So that's great. I love that idea.
You know, speaking of children, we've done several of these chats, and there's been a lot of, I think, a lot of webinars and things out there on how we're doing virtual programming for children, and a lot of the, there's a significant amount of it where it's a kit that goes home with books, or at food distribution sites, where you're sort of like putting a program together for the children to do at home. And I was wondering if anybody had thought about doing some of that. It's almost like guerrilla programming, but take home. I was wondering if anybody had thought about doing that with adults. And I know Emily, that Meridian is going to experiment with actually delivering books to people's houses. So I think I'd be interested to see if, or what have you guys like had any discussions about tacking on programming to that?
Yeah, so I mean, we're kind of in the beginning stages of talking about that a little bit, right? So we just launched our home delivery service rather than a curbside service, which is really awesome, and definitely quite the undertaking. And I don't know that much about the home delivery service myself. I'm not part of the team that's been developing that, but I know, you know, our adult programming group, we've talked about like, well, what are some, you know, some maybe adult kind of kits that we could offer. So we've kind of talked about, you know, maybe coming up with 5 different kind of like crafty things that we could put together that would just go home, and you know, a patron could check off on their home delivery form, you know, like, oh, I want the origami kit or whatever. We haven't come up with what we would want them to be yet, I guess. And then the materials in that kit would go home with them and not come back to us, basically.
That's a super cool idea. I love that. Yeah. I mean, there could even be like thinking there could be exercise routines that are just printed out that people could get.
The coloring books, the adult coloring is like a huge thing still. You could definitely get a package of Crayola pencils and some cool coloring pages.
Mm-hmm.
Send them home.
There's
or the bookmarks. I love it when you can color your own bookmark. That's my favorite.
Oh, that's fun. Nice. Because then you're like keeping it and interacting with it. That's fun. I like that. Emily, Susan is asking, who do I contact about home delivery?
yeah, I will find out who the best person is to contact about that, and I'll put that in the chat there.
Great, thank you. And I think the key points, one of the key points from that idea is the idea that it's going out and it never needs to come back. Because I was actually in the middle of developing a bunch of kits for ICFL that libraries were going to be able to borrow. However, that seems a little risky to be doing right now, so kind of have that on hold because they were things that were going to be going out and coming back. And so kind of rethinking some of that. Emily, I bet there could also be like, I could also see that the NASA at My Library program, there's some STEM activities that, even though a lot of those are geared towards children, I've seen adults have a blast with them. Like I'm thinking about the Oreo one where you have Oreos and you learn the moon phases by shaving the frosting off. And not that you need to provide Oreos in your in your kits, but thinking about giving folks an opportunity to learn about something that maybe they wouldn't normally be thinking about, and now that they're maybe feeling kind of stuck at home, an opportunity to learn some new stuff. That's a great idea. I love that.
And with the kids, we often do that at the food distribution points because there's a lot of like free lunches offered at schools and things like that. But there's it might be a good chance to connect with your local food bank or local religious organizations that are doing dinners or food handouts, just as another way for the library to connect and support its community where they're at, rather than, because they might not have library cards and they might not be set up for home delivery, but having access to library information, library resources, and then maybe some sort of activity to take them out of it for a second could be useful.
I've heard of other libraries. That's a good point, Jen. I love that. I've heard of some libraries partnering with Wheels on Meals if their community is large enough to have that. Even if there's maybe, I know a lot of informal groups have developed in communities over the last few months, and so even if it's not an official Meals on Wheels, but if there's a group that is delivering meals to folks in the community. Let's see. One of the other programs that we pulled that we thought could easily translate to probably video, I think phone could maybe work also, but it just wouldn't have as much impact, is Stanley Library, and I know a number of libraries across the state do this. They do kind of an armchair travel series where people from the community are invited to come and share photos of places they've traveled to. Right now could be a great time to be doing that because I don't know about you, but I am itching to get out of town. And so going back and maybe reminiscing about some of those past experiences, and it's just, as it can be as formal or as casual as you'd want it to be. So that would be someone putting together a series of photos from a vacation they've taken, and people could either log into a video call where they're actually seeing those slides, or they could call in and just kind of get to hear some of the stories that are shared about their travel experiences. So a great way to have members of your community be the ones actually providing the programming and helping adults in your community feel like they have a connection to the library again. Ooh, Denise, a virtual human library event would be something to provide. I know that there are a number of libraries in Idaho that have done that, and Meridian being one of them. And I had been like, you could do like breakout rooms and have each of the rooms be a book and people assigned to it. I could also see where people could just phone in. Some libraries are providing like pre-recorded story times, and that's everything from like story times for kids all the way up to like maybe reading a chapter out of a book. Then adults can phone in and listen and just listen to that. So how interesting if rather than it being a chapter from a book, what if it's a recording of someone sharing sharing their life experience, and you can have a menu of different phone numbers that people can call for different books, different human books that they want to connect with. I love that idea, Denise. That's cool. Keep us posted on how that goes. And so the last idea I wanted to share with folks was East Bonner County Library District has been doing some really great programming they've been doing Science Cafe virtually, which is, actually I'll make a note to go find the link for that later. Science Cafe is kind of a cool way to get some STEM programming out there for adults. And usually what it consists of is some sort of STEM expert coming and talking about whatever area of expertise they have, and then there being some discussion amongst the attendees. So since a good chunk of what I focus on is STEM, this is one that really spoke to me and could be a great way to engage with science experts at a university or college that's in your area. There's also there are also space science experts across every state. Sorry, Denise, not in Canada, it's through NASA. But you can certainly reach out to like local astronomy groups and see if some of them would be interested in connecting with your library right now. Let me go find I'll go find the link to the NASA at My Library program. Because on there is,
Let me answer a question really quick in the chat. So Susan, there's a couple of different ways to do phone-ins for virtual programs.
oh yeah.
If you're set up for Zoom, there's usually like a phone number someone can call. And then we were also talking about what I think is called a dial a story concept, where you have a phone number that someone calls and they just get answered to a pre-recorded message, like you would record a greeting, but it's like a long story. And as you can change your like outgoing phone message every week, you can change the story every week. So that's the other model where you have like a literal phone number, so you don't have to have that much technology. You just need to be able to record a message that's long enough for a story.
And I just put in the chat, and this is also on thank you for that, Jen. This is also on the resource list that I'll be sending out, but New York Public Library has kind of a version of that. So you could always give them a call and see what that experience is like for you, and see how you might model that in your area. And Emily shares, haven't done virtual human library, but have done the big human in-person ones in the past. It is a very big undertaking, yes. And so the idea of it not only being a huge undertaking face-to-face, but then also adding that technology component on it is something that I could see would take a significant amount of time to kind of work out some of the logistics of that. Oh, and the event was canceled this year. But could be interesting to dial a human book rather than seeing one face-to-face. Could also always have people record their stories and post them on a website. I know that's not as interactive, and that is part of what makes the Human Library Project so awesome, but would be another way to maybe at least kind of get inched towards that. Yeah.
Yeah, the event that we had scheduled was supposed to be at Tree Fort, and you know, the whole festival got canceled, but it was, you know, right at the start of all this, and they were ready to go. You know, everybody had been trained, prepped, all this. They were ready. So this might be a good way to at least, you know, help people share their stories.
Exactly, and not have all that training and time and excitement go to waste. I mean, that's one of the other things about that, right? Is people were probably really excited to do that. And moment of silence for Tree Fort, yeah. And Susan, I just want to make sure you saw in the chat that Emily did share who to contact about the home delivery. Cool. So let's see. I want to make sure that we're hitting all the areas that folks were interested in. Is there a specific challenge that someone is looking for some extra brains to help them troubleshoot a possible solution that they'd want to share?
I'm curious about what people are doing as far as if these programs are going on through the summer, or if these are programs that you're planning for the fall. And here in Teton Valley, there's kind of a feeling that people are they're tired of being in their Zoom rooms, and the weather's nice. It's a very active community. So, like what we put into doing as far as virtual programming now, or you know, what we might move into the fall. We typically just have children's programming, just the summer reading in the summer, and then we have this writing series. But otherwise, so I'm curious how you're thinking about that versus summer planning.
Well, it certainly sounded like Emily shared that Meridian is not doing any in-person programming through the end of August. And I imagine a number of other libraries throughout the state are potentially kind of looking at similar timelines like that as well. Anyone else want to chime in and share how they're looking at programming over the summer and going forward?
I just wanted to add in that we're not going to do any in-person programming, but as far as the virtual programming,
okay,
during the summer. But we are a small library and a small community, so that may be different for larger communities.
Sure.
I think that's a really good point that you make. I mean, you know your community really well, so you know that you're not going to have success doing programming anyway if you even offer it, because everybody's outside, right? They're too busy doing, you know, enjoying their space to come to library programming. For us, I know we usually offer kind of a broad array of programming for adults and people of all ages, but we know we've really narrowed down like our priorities on programming. So we're going to be doing, you know, basically like any of that fun kind of programming, crafting stuff, like we're not doing any of that, right? Virtually or otherwise. So all of our programming is based for adults is pretty much going to be focused on like short pre-recorded videos that's like, you know, job seeking tips or, you know, resources that we have to check out for, you know, career preparedness or resume, stuff like that. So we are going to be we do a year-long a year-long adult reading challenge. We call it the Extreme Book Nerd, and we're going to be starting a virtual discussion group for that. But that's really like our only programming that we're going to be doing for adults. That's sort of just for fun.
Thank you.
And Susan, it occurs to me that also talking about how you have a very active community and that idea of time, and it occurs to me that this is also an opportunity to provide asynchronous programming for adults, which means that, who knows, maybe they'd be more likely to engage because it's something they can do on their own schedule rather than having to schedule around when it's being offered. Is another way to maybe be looking at some of this. But I think, Emily, it's a great point that you make about be kind to yourselves. This is not normal times, and please do not hold yourself to the same standards that you have in the past. You know, doing something is better than not doing anything at all. And certainly I would hope that folks in your community will understand that as an institution, you're doing the best you can and still trying to address their needs and provide services. And it might be that you're really focusing on those core services that you provide, that your community really values. And that means that some of the other stuff might need to take a lower priority. Doesn't mean that you're not thinking about it, but just that don't have the staff or the bandwidth to kind of reimagine what that's going to look like, because you'd be needing to provide it in a way that you haven't in the past.
I will also add to that, sorry, one more time here, that, you know, we have a pretty large library staff, right, at Meridian Library, and, you know, we offer over 120 programs every week at our library, right? And most of those programs are put on by our library assistants, and so, you know, we've got 50 people working on programming, you know, all throughout the year. Well, now we're really significantly paring down who's working on programming. So now for adults, we're a working group of 5. So that's it. That's what we've got now, and that's fine. But that's, you know, we know what we're working with, right?
Mm-hmm. Does that help, Susan?
That does help. Thank you. I mean, we have one. It's me for adult programming here, and but that's really helpful to think about that. I think maybe some of what you said, like some resume writing and some things like that, maybe. And I like the idea of asynchronous, which would be just somebody recording something. Yeah.
Which also means it's more flexible for your staff as well. So, you know, as staff schedules are kind of all over the place, I imagine right now as well, or whether they're able to be in the building or not, also allows for some flexibility there too.
And you might consider, you know, tapping into your network of colleagues around the state. Many of you are doing wonderful online programming, and there's no reason that you can't direct some of your customers to, like, Garden City's Resume Zoom. You know, check with them first, but maybe you could share the programming load a little bit if you're going to do it virtually. Just as a way to save yourself, but also to connect with, you know, your people and work together.
It's a great idea. Thank you.
So, oh shoot, and Alice just got off the call. Yeah. So Alice was curious about kind of transition plans and such. So I just want to reiterate again that on the COVID-19 ICFL page, we do have some resources on that. So there's a whole section on reopening and safe working environments that we've collected some resources for y'all. So do please have a look at that. As a state agency, we are not providing prescripted reopening plans, but what we're doing instead is providing some examples, and we tried to find examples from different sized libraries. And definitely check with your local health district to make sure that your plan is in accordance with what their recommendations are. Certainly we're happy to chat about your plan, but we're not providing like, here, every library in the state must follow this. Any other, so we've got about 10 minutes left. Any other questions that have percolated up for people? Any other ideas?
One thing that we are considering trying to start up is like a pen pal system where we'll be, you know, we work with a number of assisted living facilities and things like that. So we're going to try to partner our, you know, patrons of the assisted living facilities with kids in our district, maybe, who, you know, both sides might like a little pen pal. And I think we're going to try and provide like 3 postcards and postcard stamps, and then they can, you know, write each other. It's a little more detailed than that, but, you know, that's the basic outline of it. So we're hopeful that that gets off the ground.
I love that idea of connecting across generations. As anytime you can do that with programming, I think is a win for everyone. And that it's a low-tech solution. I'm a fan of postcards. And I mean, it could be a fun thing where maybe the postcard itself is something that people can color in and kind of design their own. And so that way it makes it a little more personalized when it gets to the other end. It could be kind of fun. I also put a link in the chat to a resource that Colleen found, which is from the Library of Congress. They have, it's their Engage site, And what they do is they send out updates periodically of ideas on programs that are happening. And so it's a great way to connect to options at the national level. So Jen talked about that. Don't forget that you've got neighbors who are doing awesome stuff just like you are, and tapping into what they're doing, and also remembering that there's amazing stuff going on at the national level too. So even if you're struggling with staff hours or technology to be able to provide adult services, keep in mind that it might be that all you're doing is you're redirecting your users to things that are already out there. So the Engage page does have stuff across all ages, but certainly there's resources on there that I think are great for adults as well. And even some of the stuff that's geared towards kids, I think as an adult, I kind of am into as well.
We're gonna partner with PBS Books, where they're putting on the programming, but then they're providing it free for libraries. So we're connecting with that. So, and I think they have some interesting programs coming up. I'm not sure if anybody was on that call yesterday, but they're looking at more and more Detroit Public Libraries putting out some arts and culture programs, and they think they're going to be able to provide that for libraries. There's also just some different kind of programming as they talked about. So I think there may be some good resources there.
That's awesome. I'm going to go, and you said it was the PBS Books?
PBS Books.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that I grab that and put that in the list that we send out to folks. That's a great suggestion, Susan. Just looking over my notes. So has this been helpful? Have people gotten what they wanted out of this? Do you have some ideas? Do you feel empowered to go do something? I know that that's a struggle in these times, is a little bit a feeling of not having power or agency over what's going on. So that was one of my goals on hosting this call, was hoping that that you would walk away with some ideas of things that you could do and take back and do at your library. Maybe not tomorrow, and that's fine. Maybe not next week, but but down the road.
It's been helpful for me because I've felt that way. I've just kind of been losing kind of the energy to, what can we do? And if I just had the idea, since we're probably going to end up canceling our writing series, one of them was combined with journaling and creating a journal. And then I also had the idea of doing just a short series on writing about the pandemic, people's experiences. So maybe we could have this asynchronous video of how to create a journal, and then have just through the library, which would be me, I'm a writer, so, and then provide some, a few 1 hour writing projects so they would have the journal to write in. That was just an idea through all of this, to kind of how I can put things we've already planned maybe together in a virtual way. So that's really helpful.
Nice.
And a lot of good ideas too.
Great.
Susan, I think one way that you could still do the outdoor writing exercise is sort of if you set it up almost like geocaching. So you maybe you have a location around town and you say here's our writing prompt or whatever is there, and you can go on your own time and find it, right? And then it's like a little scavenger hunt, and then maybe you develop some writing around that. Maybe that's a way that you could still get that outdoor aspect in there.
Oh, that's a cool idea. I haven't done any geocaching, but that could be a really interesting. It could also be really good for both adults and children. So yeah, thank you. I like that idea.
That's a super cool idea, Emily. I also put Susan in the chat, and this link will be on the resource sheet that's going out. There's a link to the Idaho State Historical Society has been asking people to share their experiences with during the pandemic. And so it could be that, Susan, what you're doing is you're maybe kind of directing a group of people to ultimately submit something on that page as well, and make it part of the historical record, which is pretty cool, of how people across Idaho were dealing with these times.
That's a great idea.
Any other parting thoughts? So this discussion was recorded. So if you have colleagues that wanted to attend and were able to, we'll be posting that on the COVID page, and I will send out the link once that's on there out to the Live Idaho listserv, along with the resource sheet that Colleen and I created for this talk. Going forward, I'm also hoping to create a website on the ICFL page for adult services at ILA. All wistfully thinking of conference attendance. At ILA this past year, I facilitated an adult services pre-conference, and there were a multitude of ideas shared at that. And so I have slides from libraries across the state that are doing adult services. And even though all of those were in person, I think a lot of them could translate to things that address some of the safety concerns that we're having right now. Also, a list of community partners, whether they be local or statewide, that are places that you could reach out to who are already doing programming and presentations. And again, getting at that idea of, you might not have the ability to create a program from scratch, but do you have the ability to reach out to someone else who already has content, and you would just be providing the space and providing the marketing to get the message out to those in your community. So stay tuned on that. Again, when that goes live, that'll also be shared out on the Live Idaho listserv. I might see if there's actually a way I can grab some of that content and post it kind of as notes for this talk as well. So if there are no other questions, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and share your stories and share some space with us. It was good seeing and hearing you. I wish you all well. Please be well and safe. Take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.